Ever wonder why you react the way you do? Today, we're uncovering who taught you to react like that. Each episode, we dive into business, leadership, and life, exploring the moments that challenge us, shape us, and push us forward. As usual, I have with me my beautiful friends, Dr. Janine de Carbel and Christo Pretorius. Let's go.
The question this morning is, have you ever overreacted and then later thought, why did I respond like that? Your reactions didn't come from nowhere. Somebody, something taught you that. Now, who taught you to react like that? Was it your parents? Maybe your environment? Maybe your friends? Maybe there was a trauma in your life. It could have been the culture, or maybe it was just survival instinct. And today what we are going to do is we're going to be unpacking triggers, patterns, and inherited responses, and how to then shift them from automatic reactions and just rapid firing to conscious or intentional, like I like to say, responses. So with me this morning is my two great friends, Christo and Odette, and we're going to be unpacking this. So I'm going to put the ball into their court and ask them, what is one reaction you have had in your life that made you stop and then question yourself about that reaction?
Yeah, so I'll go first. A couple of years ago, I had intense discussion with one of the managers within my team. And the next moment, as we having this discussion or this intense discussion, I saw a picture or a scenario that I've seen many years ago in my life of how somebody reacted towards another employee. And the moment I saw that picture or that thing play off, I paused and I said to the person, let's sit down, let's relax. I apologize, my fault. Let's reframe and relook on how we want to discuss the discussion. And so I think it happened a couple of times in my life. There was years ago, we were just married, me and my wife, and we got into an argument. And once again, I saw some triggers, and like this, literally, people call it deja vu, and I want to call it deja vu, but that's the best way I can explain. It's like, I've been here before. I might not have been in this situation, but I was an observer. And so obviously emulating that behavior. So I've seen it a couple of times. Absolutely.
What I saw and what I've learned is that the reactions that we have, they are conditioned responses. They are not just random personality traits. But tell us, Odette.
I think, look, so much more polished, but definitely the younger me had a tendency to go psycho, like 0 to 100 flat. And I think initially it was just like, this is how I am. And then one day I was pregnant with Annabelle and I went psycho 0 to 100 on Johan. And he kind of he looked at me and I was like, oh, wait, this is not going to end well if I don't do something about it. And that for me was probably the first time where I became aware of that. Is this what I want to do? Is this how I want to respond? And with my kids, I mean, there's your husband will challenge you, work will challenge you, and then you'll have kids. And sometimes you will say things or respond in a way and you go, that sounds like my mom. Is that what I want to do right now? Like, is this how I want to do it? So definitely there's been multiple times in the past where I've caught myself going, no, what's this? Yeah.
I don't want to be like that. I don't want to respond like that. I want to condition myself differently. And I think let's speak about the origins. Like, where does these things come from? I think you've kind of mentioned it, upbringing. In other words, inherited. Could be environment. I think Pastor C, that's where you saw it, in the work environment maybe. And then it could also be unhealed experience. So if we talk about the inherited that you spoke about, Odette, it's like maybe it's things that you were brought up with where your family said, like, in this family we don't cry, or men don't cry. And when stuff happens, it's like, you don't cry because we don't cry. I know about somebody that speaks about putting their emotions when trauma hits. Let's put the emotions behind the glass, and I operate from behind the glass. Like, what is healthy, what is not healthy. And so Pastor C knows, and you also know, we recently took up camping. And while we were now trying to figure this out, I realized that every single decision you make towards the overlanding does this suit the lifestyle of my family? And when I was sitting there in the bush and I thought about these similar things, it's like, every decision that you make, does this suit the future of my family? And it's not just about, it's an everyday thing. So it doesn't really matter what your upbringing was or your environment currently is. It's the decision that you make, like, does this fit in with the future of my family? But give me some examples of what you think is where does this come from? Where does this behavior come from?
I think Pastor C has already mentioned a couple. So it could be past trauma. It could be how things happened in your home, how things happened in school. I was speaking to an elderly couple during the week, and they were recounting how their teachers in the, I don't know, I want to say 70s, because they were already in their 80s, how their teachers responded towards kids. And that results in a way that people respond. You learn from that, thinking that what I see around me is correct. The culture, there's a thing called collective conditioning. So when you are born, you're born into the collective, which is the culture around you, the way people do things. South Africa has collective conditioning in that we are post-apartheid, and there's stuff that happened there. In Australia, there's a very similar thing. It's what is normal for the people there. I think probably the best example I can think of now, actually, now that I say it, of collective conditioning. When we moved to Australia, someone said to me, South Africans are very direct. I was like, no, man, we're not. We're fine. We're just telling you how it is. We have now officially been here 5 and something years. And I dealt with a South African recently, and I was like, oh, I can see why. I see that. South Africans are just like, this is it. And yes, thank you. Australians are far softer. There are things that are okay in the culture here that are not okay in the culture in South Africa, and vice versa. So the way that we respond, we learn from observing the people around us, whether it be in church, whether it's in your office. Maybe you learned, like me, how to be a corporate person. I was well-skilled, well-trained, and well-versed in how to be corporate. Kind regards. Hello. Have you ever? I hope this email
Please find
finds you
attached.
well. You know? So you will thus, from this point forward, actually, since we moved here, not receive an email from me that says, dear so-and-so, hope this finds you well. No, kind regards is also not there. But it's those kind of things that we pick up around us because we see how people respond to it. And when the response is positive-ish towards that behavior, then we assume that that's correct, good or bad.
Absolutely. I think it's 5 things for me. It comes from what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, what you taste. I think the 5 senses plays a big role. 2 years ago, we went hunting, and Christo was a couple of months old, maybe a year. And so at home, like, I would eat lemon, I would give him lemon. I mean, no big deal, he would eat it. And so on the game farm, the owner of the farm, he thought he's going to play a trick on Christo. He's going to give him a lemon, and then he's going to pull his face, he's going to cry. Because, I mean, come on, who likes lemon? I mean, it's bitter, it's sour, it's, whatever it is. And so he had his camera out, or he told his wife, get the camera out. And he had the lemon, he was ready. And he gave it, and Christy ate it, and he just smiled. And the thing for me is that I taught him that when you taste lemon, it tastes good. If I went yeah, terrible, then he's going to mimic that. The same with smell. If I tell him something stinks, then something stinks. If I tell him that something smells very nice. So I've recently been asking him to smell things, and he just goes if he's smelling or if he's just making it bad, he's mimicking. Even last night, I was doing a couple of things, and he would do everything that I'm doing. And so I do think that, our five senses plays a big role. It comes down to the things that we've seen, the things that we've heard. I've heard people say things like, yes, cowboys don't cry, men don't cry. I've heard people say things like, this is the way I'm made. And so whenever you do something to justify yourself, you just tell them, but this is who I am. It might be who you are, it's just who you want to be. And so, yes, it comes from those five areas. It comes from the environment. It comes from past trauma. I think a very important one, it comes from the authority figures or people that you look up to within your life, because it's people you want to emulate. And then, a couple of years down the line, you then realize that, okay, I still respect those people. I just don't want to do the things that they do. I think it was Rob Thompson that said this. He says the worst day of his life was the day he met his heroes, because he didn't realize they weren't who he thought they were. And so I had a similar experience in 1998 when I played cricket with some of the top guys in our province. And I mean, I was 16 at this stage. They were 25, 26, 27, played provincial cricket, national colors. They played for the national team. And we played in a club game, and you look up to these people until after the game, and it's fines meetings, and, you go on tour with people, and you realize okay, there's certain things that you don't see on the field that happens behind the scenes, backstage. And is that what I want to live my life by? And so at the end of the day, I think that, or I know, everything we have or we've learned, which means that we can unlearn it. So if there's any attitude or attribute within my life that I don't like, I can unlearn it. I think it's Nelson Mandela said is that no person grows up hating one another. There's no difference between black and white. When kids play, I mean, I can once again take my kid. He just goes and he plays. He just calls everybody Mikey. We walk down the street, he calls everybody Wim. Whether Afrikaans, English, Xhosa, Zulu, he calls you Wim. And some of them respond, some of them don't. And he's like at the swim where he swims, there's a security guard, and every time he says, hello, Wim, and the guy never responds because he doesn't understand Afrikaans. He doesn't even hear him. But my child doesn't see the difference. But as we grow up, we teach them these things. And so if we can teach them how to respond to situations, we can then obviously retrain that attitude, that response.
You're answering the question, who taught you to react in that way? And if I summarize what all of us has been saying, I can actually say that it comes from our mentors and who we learn from. It comes from our manners. So the things that we've learned over time, like kind regards. And then it also comes from mayhem, the traumas and the situations that shaped us over time. And I think what we are saying is, if we bring it together, is that no matter actually where you learn from or what happens, you are still in control, and you still have the ability to decide, how am I going to react or how am I going to respond to this? And I think there's a time that in every situation that you could just stop for a moment and that you can take time to make that decision on how you're going to react. Who taught you to react like that? Imagine you can teach yourself to react in the way that you want to, from a place of clarity. So, Odette, what is something that you realized you copied from your upbringing?
I learned very quickly that to be accepted, you've got to be excellent. So performance meant acceptance. It served me well until it didn't, because then you start working and you start living and you think that everything's got to be perfect. It's got to be quick. It's got to be all these things. And when someone then gives you feedback, it feels like it's an attack on you. Like I'm the problem because I've identified with excellence as this is my identity and that's how I get accepted. So when you give me feedback or you tell me something, I accept it as you are now, jy vat my menswees aan. You're attacking my identity, which I've had to learn is not the case. It's that you have to review what's actually happening here. And I think for me, one of the biggest blessings was someone saying to me, you don't have to do this right now, because I would always be on it. You'd send me an email, 5 minutes later, you'd get a response. That was it. Always on, always performing, always doing it. And then one of my leaders said to me, but, I didn't actually need it that very moment. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's how we do it. That's who we are. And it's taken me some time to unlearn that behavior, because if you grow up learning that performance equals acceptance and you never question whether or not that's true, then your whole life is about performance and being on and being ready and being perfect and saying the right thing. That's a lot to carry. Like that's a lot to carry. And you have to get to the point where you say, actually, I don't have to. I'm enough as I am. I don't have to perform to be enough.
I also think that's a recipe for burnout, because a lot of the times we have to start new things. And when you start new things, you can't necessarily perform the way you expected to, because you're not there yet. You don't have the excellence and the skill and all of those things yet. And that can be quite dangerous, but that is brilliant. I definitely do not think you are the only one, Odette. I definitely not. There are listeners right now that can very much relate to what you are saying. Pastor C, have you ever caught yourself reacting just like one of your parents?
Never.
I'll give you another chance on that answer. Because I look at you and I see your dad.
Exactly. Yeah, no, all the time. And there was times where it was like, it was bad when I realized, like, I see an attribute from my parents. I was like, I don't want to be like that. I want to be my own person. But I've come to realize that's who I am. Or it's a part of who I am. I spent, the majority of my life. There was a time where I spent all of my life with them. So it's impossible not to, unless you intentionally decide to be everything that you're not and everything that they've given you. I suppose the question is, which one am I more like? Am I more like my dad? Am I more like my mom? And I suppose maybe from an attribute, I look like my dad. People, now that I've got a beard and my dad's got a beard, like we look quite similar. But I do think there's a lot of, like emotional things that I emulate from my mom. I'm very sentimental. We don't throw away stuff because, this thing somebody gave to me on the 3rd day of the 4th month. When you go to my mom's house, the house they have now in Gordons Bay, her kitchen is filled with rocks, little stones, and everyone has got something written on there. This was the first day that Caden came to visit them in the Cape, and this one was the second time they came. Because every time a kid picks up a rock, one of my mom's grandkids, she keeps it, like, because the grandkid gave it to me. And so very sentimental, and I'm very similar, with regards to that as well, So yeah, no, absolutely. There's many times that I catch myself doing things that my parents used to do, and like I said, these days I embrace it more than shying away from it. I think as you go through life, and Odette spoke about your identity, and people, when they give you feedback, it feels like they want to break down your identity, because I built my whole life on this. And definitely there's stages where you got to know who you are and who you want to be. But as you grow through that, then you start realizing there's certain things that's fine. People tell me I look like my dad, hundreds. What do you expect? People tell me, Chris, you look just like you. I'm like, what did you expect? You look like someone else. He should look like me. He should look like my wife, But also other people say to me, they look nothing like you. Chris looks like he looks like Bostanica. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Let me just take out my phone. I show them a photo when I was 2 years old and I had blonde hair. and I didn't have a beard, and people were like, oh, wow, you guys do look the same. Yeah, because you're judging me 44 versus somebody that's 2. And I think sometimes also is like we look at the way we respond. It's like, this is the first time that I get to be married, and so I'm going to respond as somebody that's doing this for the first time. I'm not going to respond to like my mom and dad that's been married now for 40, 45 years. So yes, I do, and I embrace it, and I've learned to accept certain elements. The things I don't like, I work very hard on being who I am.
And that's that inherited responses. And even with inherited responses, we can choose and we can decide which ones am I keeping and which ones doesn't serve me and my family well, and I'm going to change those. And that again forms our own identity, and our children will once again inherit some of our responses. That's one of the things that really made me stop and think, is like, how am I reacting? How am I responding? Because I'm actually teaching my children now how to handle this situation, how to respond to trauma, how to respond to financial difficulty, how to deal with people. They inheriting my responses. And I realized that that's the first place we're falling back onto, is how did my parents do it? How did my family do it? Maybe it's not your parents. Maybe it's like, how did my family do it? It's one of the first things that we fall back onto is inherited responses. And I think that some of the reactions that we have is defense mechanisms because we're trying to protect something. And I want to move over to triggers, because triggers is one of the reasons we respond to things in a certain way. And triggers is not an event that happens in our life, but I think it's what the event touches on the inside of you. Going back to what Odette said, is when you corrected me, it felt like you touched something on the inside. You're working with my identity. So that actually probably was a trigger for you. So as an example is that somebody interrupts a person, you explode. Why? Because maybe when you were growing up, you weren't heard as a person. So the interruption isn't the issue. The old wound is actually the issue. And I think each one of us has to identify those triggers. And you have to ask yourself these questions. What are the triggers or the situations? What are the situations that triggers you instantly? What is that thing that happens and it's like, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Because if you do that, I'm going to react. You have to ask yourself the next question is like, okay, what emotion did you jump to first? Was it anger? Was it silence? Maybe sarcasm? It could have also been withdrawal. And then what do you think that what are you going to do about that reaction? Because we can't just leave it at that. If you think about anger, is it because you have to refer back where this is coming from? So maybe in our own lives, we can mention some of the situations that triggers us instantly, and then we can work it through to show the listeners that this is how you're going to work through this issue for yourself. Maybe you can think of something, Pastor C. What situation triggers you instantly? Like, don't do that to me.
It would definitely be the situations that I had the greatest exposure to. So marriage, now that I've got a child, the way I treat my kid, work, church, those are the areas. And I'll say it like this, is that, when Chris is not listening to me after the third time I ask him not to do that, then I find myself responding very similar to the way my dad responded. And then you would ask yourself, but I haven't thought about me and my dad, or my dad being 30, me being 2, in the last 30 years. Why is it coming to the forefront? It's because I had an exposure, multiple exposures in my life in those areas. And therefore that comes to the forefront. The same in marriage, whenever me and Pastor would disagree on certain things, I do see traits of what I saw my mom and dad did, and the same with her, So that's where I see the triggers take place mostly for me. It's those areas that I had the most exposure. Secondly is the areas that had a great impact within my life. So once again, like on the weekend, we went camping, and some of the people that went with us, their caravan and their tent was the same color that my aunt and my uncle had. when 35 years ago, we went camping with them. And immediately when I saw the colors, all of these emotions, all of these experiences, the memories started coming to the forefront. And I responded in that same type of way. I all of a sudden, started playing with the kids. They were throwing, a ball and catching it. So the second trigger for me is in those areas where you had, incredible memories, or maybe it might be pain as well, When you speak about emotion, I think something that came up recently that my wife has been, encouraging me that I need to work on is, she says that I've become very defensive whenever, we speak about stuff. And then I think to myself, I'm not defensive. I'm just telling you what my side of the story is. And then I realized, okay, but in that I'm defending. And I'm asking myself the question, it's like, okay, I can acknowledge this. Where did this come from? And then
That's what I want to figure out. Exactly.
Yeah, I realized for a very long time, I had to justify everything I was doing. I had to justify an idea. I had to justify the reason I did it, justify the execution. And, when you're in that environment, then without knowing, you become defensive in not just work or church or marriage or as a father, but in everything. I like to say this, how you do one thing is how you do everything, so there's an element to that, is that, if you're going to be defensive in your marriage, it's quite possible that when you're at work, when you're with friends, wherever you are, you're going to be defensive. You're going to justify everything. So yeah, those are the two triggers that I've seen. And then obviously the emotion that has come out recently that I'm working on, but I realize it comes from that justification aspect. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I want the listeners to do is like, okay, you're feeling defensive, or people are telling you are quite defensive. Okay, go back. Have you had to justify yourself in the past a lot of times? For me, it was sarcasm. So that's how I used to respond to hurt. Like if you hurt me, then I would be very sarcastic. But it's not because I was being funny. It's because you were hurting me. Some people, that's how I responded to hurt. So the moment I wanted to be, that was the trigger. The moment I wanted to be sarcastic, I had to pull myself back and say, hold on a minute, just breathe, just pause. You just got hurt. Just be careful how you respond now. Other people respond to hurt maybe in anger. Other respond to hurt maybe with withdrawal, right? Like they're protecting the vulnerability, so they just withdraw completely, go into silence. They just won't say anything. Mine was sarcasm, so I had to figure that out. So maybe for you, Odette, what did you figure out when it comes to the response versus the emotion you were feeling?
So my biggest learning was when I had kids, because I would react, because kids have that way of just, bringing everything up. And I realized that that's not what I wanted. One of the books that has helped me tremendously, not only when my kids were small and in parenting, but just the thinking behind it as life and as a leader, as a human being, was called Parenting Scripts. It's because I have a very fiery personality, and like you, Dr. J, also sarcasm. And I did that one well. I try now not to, because now I have a daughter who's exactly like me. Looking in the mirror is fun. So in Parenting Scripts, what they tell you to do is to stop. You don't have to react in the moment. You can think about what it is you want to say, unless obviously there is something that you need to address in this moment. There is a danger that needs to be addressed or whatever, then obviously do so. But it's about stopping, walking away if you can, thinking about it, and then coming back with, this is actually what I wanted to say in the way that I wanted to say it. So it gives you that opportunity to think about, how do I want to handle this particular thing? So Parenting Scripts is really that's where I got my, okay, wait, let's take a pause. Let's review where this comes from. And funny enough, when I then did my coaching certification, I had a conversation with one of my coaches at the time, and I had a really tough coaching session with this other person. And I said, so I don't understand, but I was so triggered. She goes, who does it remind you of? I'm like, okay. I didn't realize that until that moment. And sort of when you become aware of it, then everything you go through goes through this filtering process. Is this, have I seen this before? Am I okay with how I'm responding? Am I reacting or am I responding? What's the difference? Reactions are urgent. They're generally out of fear, and it like happens in the moment. There's a lot of emotion attached to reactions. And a response is generally after you've taken a breath. They're not that urgent, and you speak slowly, and it's all good. And it's stopping to say, well, is this a person that's triggering me? Is this reminding me of something and someone? And quite often it's hurt, because we're not talking about reactions as in someone brings you a surprise and you're like, this is fantastic boost. Those aren't a problem. Let's just be real. We're talking about the reaction where you are angry, you flash out at someone, you become sarcastic, or you withdraw completely, and the way that you are responding in that moment is because something in your past has hurt you. It's generally out of fear, and your reactions keeps you safe or kept you safe, and because it protected you in some way at that time, your body goes, well, this is how we protect ourselves, so we do it again. And when you kind of become aware, when you become aware, when you make the choice to say, this actually is no longer relevant, I need to stop, I need to breathe, I need to decide where or identify where this comes from. So notice the response, identify where it comes from, understand what was the situation, and also have grace for it, right? Like we look at these things and say, oh, it's so bad because I'm reacting that way. No, it's not. There is grace for that. That protected you, and it served a purpose in that time. It no longer serves a purpose, and you are now a different person. And at some point, your learned behaviors and conditioned responses become a choice. Now you're choosing to be the sarcastic person in the room. Now you're choosing to always be angry. And you've got to decide, is that who I want to be? And we have to separate our emotions from the past to the present. So I am no longer a 6-year-old little girl who is in a corner. I am now a grown woman who can speak my mind, who can do whatever I need to do. So that response or that reaction is no longer valid. And then I need to talk to myself about that, right? It sounds silly, but like, hey, is this who you want to be? Is this what you want? Because if it is, that's fine. But if it isn't, we have the power to choose differently. And the parenting script thing comes to mind in that I can think about how will I respond to these things next time? Why? I don't know about you. I know I always say I wing it, but that's 100% not true. So yes, I've always lied to you when I said I'm winging it. Always. I don't wing it. It's sitting down and writing down, what does it look like if I responded differently? How does it feel? What are the things I'm saying? What words do I choose? Because just like the athletes need to visualize doing the thing and winning 20 million times in their minds before they actually win in the thing, your response needs to be visualized. You need to be able to see yourself do this thing. You need to know what words you choose. How are you going to say it? What's your tone? So that when it happens, your response, you've already decided. You know how you respond in this because you've already chosen who you are, and your emotions are no longer taking over and hijacking the conversation. I feel like that was a lot.
That was a lot of good. I think the question we need to ask then to get to the bottom of the feeling is, what is the reaction that you're trying to protect? What is the reaction that you're trying to protect? So if we look at the feeling of anger, it's most likely protecting hurt. Or sarcasm is most likely protecting hurt. If we look at silence, maybe like somebody that withdraws, maybe they are protecting vulnerability. You're making me feel vulnerable right now. So now I'm withdrawing, or I'm going to just become silent because this is too much. I feel you too close. If you are somebody that controls and has to be in control, maybe you are somebody that is protecting fear. So because you fear you're not in control, you can't handle the situation. So you are absolutely controlling everything because of the fear of not being in control and not being able to handle or control the situation. And then maybe the sarcasm, or the opposite of sarcasm is humor. A lot of people respond in humor, but actually they just really, it's awkward for them. They are very uncomfortable right now. So they make a joke to just get over this or get through this. So they're using humor as it. So the question is then, what do you think the reaction protects? You need to figure out what are you protecting? What is that actual feeling happening? One of the things, I think it was Jim Rohn, that spoke about the feelings, but there's certain feelings that's going to make us change the way we behave. And one of those feelings is disgust. And I like what you are saying, Odette, is like we have to have some grace. But you're going to get to a point, and I think maybe that's what you were saying in the beginning, Pastor C, like as we started the podcast, is this thing happened and I realized I don't want to be like this. What did you feel? Maybe disgust is a strong word for it, but you were like, this is disgusting. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to act like this. I remember a situation in my past. I was still in high school where I reacted in a way. And in that moment, I was like, this is disgusting. You're not going to be like this. So that's one of the emotions that's going to make you change your behavior completely, is disgust. And one of the others is to decide. We've spoken about that a lot today. Is you're going to just have to decide. I like this version of me, or I don't like this version of me. And you have to decide, like, man, I'm going to change this or not. We spoke about our environments. And another emotion that goes with environments is desire. So desire comes from two places. Desire comes from what's on the inside of you. You desire something, and desire gets triggered by your environments. So I desire to be a better person. I desire to make different decisions. Why? Because my environment demands that from me, or is looking for that. The people around me are making better decisions. They are responding instead of reacting. So I can do the same thing. So all these feelings has got reactions, got responses, and it's also got, it's going to have an impact on your future and your relationship. So we have to figure out, what is that trigger? What is the thing that triggers you? And if you can work that out, then you'll make better decisions. You will obviously don't deal with disgust, and your desires is just going to look really, really different. The next question I want to answer is then, why do we stay in this place? Why do we not make better decisions? Why do we just respond consciously to what we're going through? Pastor C, I see you smiling, so I assume you know exactly what you want to say.
You've already answered that. It's the anger, it's the resentment, it's the vulnerability. It's all of those emotional things. The reason that I don't change is because I'm hurt, and so I'm not going to change. Or I am, vulnerable in this area, and so to remain, I'm going to remain silent, because that protects my vulnerability. So I do think that, all of those things that you've mentioned, I want to be in control because I'm fearing. So until you deal with the fear, you'll always be in control. Until you deal with the hurt, you'll always be angry. Until you deal with the vulnerability, you're always going to be silent. So yeah, the reason that people remain there is those things. It's absolutely them. What changed for me was the late Skip Ross. He said this to me. He asked me this question: is this what you want? Is this what you want? So ask yourself this question when you're going through something, when you reacted and you realize it's not the way you want to react. Is this what you want? I remember I used to say that I'm tired. I said it to my dad a couple of times, and he's like, no man, don't say that. And then I asked myself the question, is this what I want? Do I want to be tired? I'm so frustrated, these days with these people that are driving on the road. Is this what you want? And it just becomes so personal, that's personal development, that's reflection, that's introspection. It's like, okay, I'm not saying anybody is right or wrong. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm simply asking myself the question, is this what I want? Is this the person I want to be? If it is, great, I'll continue on the spot. If not, I'm going to make some adjustments. And that has really helped me tremendously in the last, I would say the last 10 years, to navigate, okay, what is that person that you want to be, And as you go along the way, you learn from people. And I mean, it might not even be people that you like, or even people that you're close with. I mean, these days with social media, and I mean, the blessing of podcast. I mean, you have the opportunity to access the mind of somebody by just listening to a 2-hour podcast. And you can hear 30, 40 years of experience and of journeys and of life. And you can ask yourself, okay, is that something similar? I recently read the book of Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights, just like his autobiography. And when I read his book, it's like, there's certain elements like, I want to be like that. Those are things that I want to do. I want to be able to be sporadic, to just get in a car, just go, and we go on a drive, we go on a camping trip, or whatever the case might be. Jesse Easter is another guy that I quite enjoy, that just, he lives life like at full tilt. When it comes to work, he works very hard. When it comes to play, he plays very hard. When it comes to his family, he's very dedicated. He mentioned this to me the other day, where he said that I'm never tired when it comes to my kids. Doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter what time it is. When my kids come through the door, I'm never tired. I see you smiling because, it's like when I listen to a podcast and the guy says something, like he said it to me. So I just tell people, like, this guy said this to me because he did, over the podcast.
You did?
I mean, yeah, I was talking to Jesse the other day, and, he mentioned the following. So, yeah, I think it comes down to that personal question that you have to ask yourself. Everybody is a victim. Maybe this will help somebody. Everybody is a victim. Or at some point in time, you were the victim. Everybody in their lives at some point in time, they have been angry. Everybody in their life at some point in time, they have been silent. Everybody in their life at some time wanted to be in control. Everybody in their life has been sarcastic before. Is that where you're going to camp? Is this the hill you're going to die on? Odette. And it's when you start to realize, like, hey, man, let me make it personal again. I realized a couple of years ago, it took me a while, I am not unique. I am unique. I am special. I'm God's apple of his eye, but I'm not unique. Everybody is going through the same things that I'm going through. Everybody is treated the way I'm being treated. And so stop feeling sorry for yourself, Christy, and feel like you are unique and nobody knows what you're going through. No, there's a lot of people that know what you're going through. Yeah, so that's my talk in the mirror. You're not unique. You are unique. You're not unique. You are unique. And when I realized that everybody goes through these things, like, okay, great, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to be a part of the problem, or I'm going to be part of the solution. And I choose to be a part of the solution.
We asked the question, why do people not change? Why do they stay where they are? And I think I love what you are saying, because you're also saying that people stay the same because there's a lack of awareness. If Jesse didn't speak to you, you wouldn't have even noticed those
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
And people don't change because there's a lack of awareness. They don't change. You can't change what you don't notice. Thinking back on something you said earlier about being in an argument with your wife as an example, and she kind of wants to help you with something. And I'm not saying you have a big ego, but ego stops us a lot of the time because we don't want to be wrong. So we'd rather stay the same because then what do? We justify our actions, because if I don't justify it, it means that I'm wrong, and that affects my ego. Something you also said is it comes down to familiarity. So it feels normal to respond in this way, even if it's unhealthy. So I'm just going to respond in this way. So you have to check, am I just being familiar with this response? It's a familiar response. I respond like this always, But doesn't make it healthy. It doesn't make it right. So that's why people stay the same, because they're like, this is just the way that I know. This is the only way I know how to respond. So therefore, I keep responding that way. And then something that I think, Odette, I want to know what notes you wrote down there. So I think something that you would agree with is the speed. We go into a flight, fight, or freeze response, and then we just respond. And it's just the same way we responded the last time. So why do you think people stay in automatic?
Yes, Pastor C, and I see what you're saying, and I raise you two things. The first is they react the way they react because they don't know how to react any other way. I had a conversation with a coaching client yesterday, and I said to him, the reality is, if they knew better, they'd do better. If I know how to choose differently, I will choose differently. But because I don't have the tools, and this is different from awareness. Awareness is, ooh, Odette, that's not the way we do things. Okay, that's awareness. What I'm talking about is, I know this is negative. I know this is not good, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what are the things I need to do, and I don't know that it's within my ability to change it, right? So that's the I don't know how. That's why. Okay, and that's fair. The other flip side of that, which you probably will enjoy far less, is they respond that way because it serves them. I'm a victim because it serves me to be a victim. I am sarcastic because it serves me to be sarcastic. Why? If I'm a victim, everyone is always saying, oh, shame. That's terrible. Can I give you a hug? Do you need to talk? Shame. Right? I get something from that. I get power from whatever my response is. Therefore, it doesn't matter that I know that my response sucks. It doesn't matter that I know how to do it differently. In this particular instance, the power that I receive from being sarcastic, from being the smartest in the room, I see that as my soapbox. That's my power. And quite often, people will choose to remain in that power because it serves them far better than saying, well, actually, maybe I should change. And society plays into that. The victim mentality is one of my triggers. Do not be a victim. No. No. That? No. But the people who do that get something from it. And in society, everyone's like, oh, shame. Oh, let me give you a hug. We have to be nice to her because shame. You get something from it. Sorry. Truth.
Can I raise you two more? The people don't know how, fair enough, but there's somebody else that does know how. Just find them. And then you mentioned that, people choose that because it serves them. Absolutely. But it's a choice. And if you choose to remain there, you can also choose to get out of it. The challenge is, how do we help people through this journey? Because some of them needs empathy and some of them needs a kick to move on, and it's almost to juggle those areas, because I do agree with what you say. People don't know how. For a long time, I didn't know how, and I wish somebody could come and show me a clear path. And it didn't happen. It happened the way it happened, and I'm thankful for that, because I had to realize and become aware of certain things. But there are other people that need somebody that's going to lead them, that's going to guide them, it's going to walk the road with them. And so, I suppose it's the bit of both. I suppose we need to have a lot of discernment, is maybe a better word. How are we going to deal with this? I just wanted to mention something that you said, Dr. Janine, about familiarity. So we are familiar with the situation that we are in, or the emotion that we are feeling. And I was immediately taken to that scripture that familiarity breeds contempt. And that scripture has always been used in and maybe I'm taking it out of context, maybe not, just a thought, use it, don't use it. This is not a theological podcast, so please don't take me out. But now that you mention about familiarity breeds contempt, and contempt just means that disregard or disrespect, I was thinking in the aspect of like, if we're familiar in that aspect with ourselves, we bring an injustice or a disrespect towards ourselves because we're not living up to the potential that we have. We're not living up to the person. Call it the version of you, call it the potential, whatever you want to call it. But we're not living up to what is possible because we are familiar and we stay in that area familiar. And therefore, familiarity breeds contempt. And it's not just about being familiar with people and disrespecting them, but you're disrespecting yourself. And I think that's even worse, because if I disrespect myself, I will surely disrespect other people, because I do one thing is I do everything. So when you mention familiarity, that scripture just came to mind in the context of what we're speaking. I think it's
I think you said a key thing there is, how do we help people to move through this? How do we help them not to become familiar? From our conversation today, what would you say are practical tools that they can use to not react in that same way? Maybe we've said it already, but it's a kind of like a summary of like, here's the practical things. This is how you're going to get past this. This is how you're going to get through. This is how you're going to react differently in the future to what you are reacting now.
Before we, there are 3 very capable coaches in the room. Pick up the phone, send an email, have a conversation. You cannot do this by yourself. That's the reality. In terms of practical things, it comes down to notice the pattern, pay attention. Is this who I want to be? Is this who triggers it? What situation triggers it? What happens in my body? Do I feel a certain way? Is it suddenly I get hot? Do I feel like my shoulders tense up? What is happening? And then where did I learn this? This requires you to sit down and think about what's going on right now and where did it start? Where did I see it? Who did I see it with? And what did it protect me from at the time? Many times our responses are protection at the time, and it served us well then. So now we need to choose differently, because what got you here is not going to get you there. And then choose to upgrade. But the choose to upgrade is where the parenting script comes in. Okay, what is the upgrade? I want to be different. It's all good and well to say I want to be different, but I don't know what different looks like. So I have to choose what my different looks like. And if you're not sure what your different looks like, Dr. J, Pastor C, myself, we're all open to have conversations, because this is a conversation where you sit down and reflect back. Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in this world? And when I know what that looks like, then I can create the script. I can practice it. The next time I'm in that tough situation, I can play it. It's not a problem.
I agree with you. I think the stuff that I've learned and how I practically apply this, and because we have to all the time teach ourselves to react in a different way, because it doesn't serve the situation, it doesn't serve the room that you're in, and even the situation is always different. So one of the first things that I do is, I call it the pause rule. I pause before I just make that decision and just go crazy. Is I ask myself this question: what am I actually feeling? Is this about now, or is this about something that happened before? You will have no idea what that 5 seconds, how big of a difference that 5 seconds will make. Like, is this about now, or is this what I'm feeling about before? You have to absolutely name the trigger. You have to name the trigger. And the trigger is, I feel dismissed, I feel disrespected, I feel rejected. Maybe you just feel ignored, but you have to just ask yourself that question. What is the trigger that I'm feeling? And then you have to separate the past from the present. is this person actually my past, or am I reacting to history? But, this is not my reality right now. I'm not in the same place that I used to be. I'm not even in the same environment, surrounded by the same people, but I'm still reacting in the past way. So you have to separate the past from the present. Something that Odette reminded me of, because I also read that book about parenting scripts, and I remember we were listening to it together at some point many years ago, and I loved it. It also had a really great impact on my life. But it made me realize in this situation is we need to choose a new script. Instead of exploding, can you finish your thought? Instead of just completely shutting down, can you just say, just hold on a minute. I need a minute. Don't shut down. I just need a minute. Me, instead of sarcasm, maybe I should just verbally say, don't do that. Don't say that. It hurts. It hurts. I didn't like the way you said that. Maybe I can just respond in that way. So, and then I think afterwards, I like to always come back and evaluate. Not in the moment, but later on, just have a cup of coffee and think about this. What did that situation touch on the inside of me? When have I felt it before? How did I respond this time versus another time? And go through the motions afterwards, but come back and reevaluate, come back and relook at the way that you've reacted. Use these points. Odette has mentioned quite a lot of them. I've given you about 5 of them now. That's going to help you to move from that automatic response to the response that you are in charge of and the response that you are in control of. I think if I can, I like practical things. And like you said, Odette, as we are all coaches. Next time you react strongly, I need you to ask yourself this question. Who taught me to react like this? Who taught me to react like this? Did I teach myself this? Was it my environment? Was it a past trauma? Was it an automated or an inherited response? You need to ask yourself that question. Who taught me to react this way? Where did I learn this response? Where did it come from? Does this reaction still serve me? Maybe your reaction doesn't serve you anymore. Does this reaction still serve me? And I think here comes the most important question. What would a healed version of me do instead? What would the healed version of me do instead? Because sometimes you are hurting, sometimes you're responding from past trauma. So ask yourself this question, which is future focused. What would the healed version of me do instead? And what I want to encourage you with today is that you're absolutely not crazy. You've just got a pattern. And patterns can be rewritten. Patterns can be broken. And maybe there's just some patterns in your life that you need to rewrite, some patterns that you need to break. So what would the healed version of you look like if you respond in a different way in the future? The fact is that you can't control the first feeling that you are feeling, but you can definitely control the next move that you make. And as we close this episode, I want to give my 2 coaches an opportunity to maybe encourage somebody and give them something that they can react to rather than respond to. Odette?
Our reactions tell a story, but they don't have to write our future. The moment we become aware, we become powerful.
That's so powerful. Cross the sea? That's powerful. That's powerful. If this episode meant anything to you today, maybe triggered some thoughts in your mind and reminded you of some reactions and behaviors, let us know in the comments, send us a message, pick up the phone, send us a WhatsApp, and let's help you through these moments yourself. And maybe you with listening to this and thinking of somebody else, and you're like, man, they can really do with this podcast, and this can really help them. Then send it to them, share it with them, so that we can help them as well. And I hope you enjoyed today. And who taught you to react like that? Let's change that in the future.
For me, it's simple but not obvious. So you got to find, the thing that's going to make it important for you. Like Odette said, now she's got a child that, remodels what she used to be like. And it's the same for me. I'm not saying get a kid, but you got to find a mirror. Maybe that's a better word. You got to find a mirror, and whatever that is, if it's a spouse, if it's a relationship, if it's a friend, if it's a situation. But, the need or the desire to become needs to be greater than the want to remain.